Welcome back to Yachting Around and happy Friday. Today we have Lisa Gould from On Deck Yachting to share her unique and very much needed services in the industry. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining. Of
Thank you, Megan, for having me.
course, it's my pleasure. And I know you're on a boat somewhere doing something fun. So, thanks for hopping on.
Of course. I'm glad you called me right before the holiday season because that's where it's impossible to do.
Yep, I feel that. All right. So, for the listeners, can you share a bit about your background and how you founded On Deck Yachting?
So basically I've been really starting on deck yachting for almost probably 6 or 7 years now. So I've been doing a lot of research before I even launched. So I really just launched last year for the first time. And yeah, I've been getting a really good following on my Instagram. I'm really new to the whole Instagram thing. So yeah, my videos on there are homemade. So I've filmed all of them on board and on all the vessels that I've been on. So yeah, it's kind of like a learning tutorial, trying to get people to, just catch on to on deck yachting. So eventually I'll be leaving the boats and basically managing interior. So we're an interior management company. So there's a gap in the industry that's kind of missing for, chief stews or any stews really interiorly. There's no really good training. And so basically, yeah, I'm setting up this thing where it's basically privatized. So it's not a school. So that's what makes me different and unique. I'm actually hired on by the owners, and then I will go on board and prep and set up everything that the owners like and how they want it, all the preferences, really like, work hand in hand with the chief stew to make sure that she's on par with everything that the owners want and kind of putting that division between head of house and the owners. Basically, owners, I've chatted to a lot of them and they all say the same thing. They kind of want that distance. They want to come on board and it be a vacation. So, operational process should be separated from actual their fun experience on board. And so basically that's what on deck comes in. And then we give the support to the crew. So it's also an HR department for the entire crew to kind of help captains out so they don't have to deal with the drama and all of that stuff. And they can, deal with their operational portion of it on board as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So with all the process and structure that you implement, why is that so critical within the interior team versus not having it at all? What's the difference there?
So our industry has a really high turnover rate. So we're at 85%. And that's pretty high for anything considering. And it's really not because the crew members, are not good or they're not talented. It's because they don't have the support, they don't have the structure, they don't have anything. And then the courses that are out there to teach, especially interior, for instance, the wine courses, they don't really help the stews at all because I shouldn't say it doesn't help it at all. They definitely do help stews for sure, but really they need to be trained on how to present wine, how to handle wine. They need to look up a little bit of information just to have like, just talks and, talking points with the owners because really all owners, they already know what kind of wine they want. They don't want a sommelier. If they did, then they would hire someone on and we are not sommeliers on board. That takes years of training. And there's so many different varieties of wine out there. It's impossible to just memorize everything. And so really we should not be worrying about where the grape came from, how do they process it, all of that stuff. We really need to know is how do you handle the bottle? How do you hold it? All different types of techniques of like, pouring, making sure you don't spill it all over the guest. Those are the things that we really need to have, you know, training in, not, what region it came from or what
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good. So, I was about to ask what is a key component to make the whole process effective, but it sounds like you have an array here. There's so much that goes into it, really.
it's a lot. The interior really deals with a lot more than people really make it out to be. I mean, we handle everything, and the thing is that too with the high turnover rate. So, when the next girl comes in, there's really, I've rarely been on boats where I've really gotten a proper handover or a proper just interior book that explains everything that's been updated and anything. And that's where my basically company comes in. And it goes in and we do all the inventory. We set up, a program for them to add into the inventory, all that. So if something doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. We can train the next girl or the next person coming in and it be kind of flawless going through. But our main goal is really to train who's there. I really don't believe in firing. I think everyone's trainable as long as you have the right attitude and that you want to grow and just be better. And so, and really, I don't know, I feel like we've lost luxury, the actual true meaning of luxury in yachting. A lot of people are just pegging it as, oh, you spent a million, 23 million on this boat. And no, that's not it. It's provision or provision, precision, and like just actually going through and making sure the entire team runs completely flawlessly. The owner shouldn't have to ask you any questions or be upset or feel uncomfortable, bringing up anything on board. It should just run smoothly. And it really should be ran how the owners want it to be ran. I think that's one of the most difficult things for some stews because a lot of people will bring in past experiences. I think it's important to talk about those past experiences, but they also have to understand that owners are all different. They all want different things. And so you have to be able to comply with that. And if you don't, that's where the animosity comes in because ego comes into involved with that. And, people are just like, well, I've been doing this, for 15 years. And it's like, if they want a can of beans, serve them at dinner, then
Yeah.
and it's really to like, just make sure that you make everything unique, just read the people in the room, read your guests, really find out, ask them questions so that you can actually basically prevent any mistakes from happening. I've seen in a lot of cases, I've talked to a lot of crew that, they'll talk about whoever's in charge. They didn't order enough water. They didn't order enough, wine. They didn't order enough. And it's because they don't know the formulas behind it, and the same thing when it comes down to just provisioning in general, for the chefs. It's like, how do you calculate how much you're going to spend on your provisions? You have some chefs that really understand that process and will do it, a dollar sign per meal per person. And then you have the ones that are like, oh, I have a credit card. I can spend whatever I want and do whatever I want. And then you have an abundance of waste on board, which, most owners don't like waste. Um, yeah, so it just basically it cuts all of that when you have structures and then identifying roles and making sure that people understand what their roles are, what their titles mean and what their, can do, that makes a huge difference as well. Like a lot of people on board, it's just like they're just fighting each other. You have the first officer and the chief stew fighting each other. You have the chief stew and the chef fighting each other. And you have the captain fighting with, whoever. And you have the deckhand that's fighting with the chief officer and all of this stuff. And then the bosun. It goes back and forth because you really don't just get on a boat and then they say, hey, this is what you're responsible for. This is where,
Mhm.
and there's no coming out of it. I've never really seen that in our industry. And so like just understanding, roles and hierarchy and, not overstepping boundaries, things like that.
Yeah, that's huge because that could like make or break the total excursion, like with all that toxicity in the air and all the cat fighting. Yeah, not a good experience for the owners at all.
There's
Yeah. What is your approach to overcoming those sort of challenges and cat
it's
fights that I keep calling?
To be honest with you, I've been actually really lucky in my career. I've had nothing but really good owners. So I've never had really any complaints on the owner side. I've had one, bad charter guest out of my entire career, and that was it. And then, yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for heads of department because especially the range that I'm in, I like to my sweet spot is staying between 120 to 140 6 feet. That's usually I don't or basically anything under 150, but above 115. I know that sounds very specific, but I like that range because you have a close knit crew that you can like, just bond with. And then also too, the owners are just down to earth and they really value crew on that point. So, but I've also worked bigger vessels, a little
Mhm.
shy under, 200 feet. And the owners I like them. They didn't really talk that much, but I've never really had issues with that, but I've heard, many, many stories.
Oh, yes. I'm sure they're out there. So, what's the most overlooked aspect of a crew member's well being that yacht owners should care about?
Um, it's really there's so many obviously you have your good captains and you have your bad captains. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of captains leadership is really important instead of being a control freak, you know? And that goes for heads of departments, not just captains. That also goes for brokers, all of that stuff. You really have to become a leader and want to unify things. And our industry definitely lacks that. It's more of a power trip. So, for
Mhm.
females, unfortunately, we have to go through sexual harassment. That's just, it's part of the game, it's part of the industry. And there's nothing you can really do about it. You know what I'm saying? Who are you going to complain to?
Mhm.
We're not like a corporation. There is no HR department. And you're talking about, owners who don't really care about the drama. It's like just get rid of the problem, and because this is supposed to be fun for them. This is not supposed to be, a ship full of drama basically. And so,
Yeah.
like, but then when you have captains that are part of the problem, it makes it difficult. But then you also have really good captains that are kind of being overseen by, the bad captains. I've talked to so many captains and they'll always complain and say they're just not leaders. They've been doing it for so long and they don't have any, I guess, like accountability. I would have to say accountability. And that goes, and it's just not captains. It's also, understanding roles, same things. I've heard captains complaining about brokers not staying in their lane, brokers complaining about captains not staying in their lanes, captains complaining about, the hate HODs and not staying in their lane, vice versa. So we all have our little complaints about each other, but it's more of like, let's unify. Let's not talk about the problems. And when you have someone strong, like I have a strong personality. So basically, I like things done properly, like do a little bit of research when you're doing things. For instance, um, for me, I love the girls underneath me. Like they are amazing just because they just want to learn. But if we can't be supported by even higher up, it doesn't matter if that makes any sense.
Right.
So it's like you have to have the support of the entire team. And so like the deck team has to be able to work with the interior team. The interior team has to work with the chef, and all of us have to work together as a team. And when we all start segregating, it makes it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, hence a high turnover rate. And that doesn't even give people room to learn because they want out, right, from bad experiences. And part of what you guys do is learning, getting the experience to anticipate needs, to cater to the owners and whatever they want. And you
Yeah,
can't get that experience if you're out because someone's treating you poorly. So
correct.
it all ties together.
Anyone. Who do you call? For instance, there are like management companies out there, but the management companies really go based on compliance. They really don't. They're not set up to like really support the crew. No one really supports the crew. And for instance, I contacted this one company, this management company that I was in. I was having issues because I was coming on board and I just felt the animosity, and basically like the captain and the project managers were just not getting along, and you can feel the tension. And so the captain has his own stress. So of course, I pulled this captain aside and I said, hey, are you upset with me? Because I feel like I'm kind of being pushed out of a lot of things, and I had just started. He's like,
Mhm.
"No, I'm just," and he was going on and, come to find out he was being pushed out, and it was pretty sad. And the thing is I called the management company to say, "Hey, I don't know," because there were rumors of things that were happening, so that's the only reason why I went to the management company and just expressed my concerns and really almost to give my resignation just because I said I wasn't really happy. And then what did that, project or not project manager, the management company did. He was like, "Well, how do you wanna resolve this? What would you like done?" And I was like, "Well, let me just think about it a couple of days because I know there's these rumors that are flying around," and he pretty much was agreeing to these rumors. So I was like, "Let's just play it out and see what's going on." And then he ends up calling the captain 30 seconds after we get off the phone, basically telling him I was just talking a lot of bad things about him and having, animosity. And it's just like, I thought we were going to talk about this. I thought you were going to give me a couple of days to figure out how we were going to handle this situation. And so, of course, the captain pulls me aside and, is not happy. And, obviously, when he was saying stuff to me, it was, it's difficult to have a conversation now because you're already angry. So, like, who do you talk to about your issues if no one can really resolve them? Do you see what I'm saying? And then when people don't know their roles on board either. So there was a lot of things with that. And then I just knew it was just too much. And
Yeah.
it was just been crazy. And I'm thinking like, okay, how do we fix this problem? How do we like help the crew? Because there's really no support for the crew. I mean, it's either a captain likes you or he doesn't. You know, for a girl, if the captain decides to hire you based on your looks, you won't date them. They get upset. You worked on the boat, you did a great job, but they won't give you a reference. So you just worked, a year on the boat. Now you don't get a reference because he does not getting what he wants. And it's very common. I've talked to many, many girls that have gone through that because I thought I was the only one, not the only one, but I was like, maybe. And then when you start talking to a lot of people, you're like, wow, like this has to be addressed. This is not okay. And
Yeah,
so
that's so messed up, and apparently it's, like, behind closed doors because I'm not seeing that kinda stuff on social media, what's happening here. Well, except, for that young stewardess that got murdered from South Africa on a luxury yacht. I mean, that should not happen, period.
yeah, yeah, and she filed complaints before that, and that's the thing, like, in our industry, if a girl gets sexually assaulted, it's her fault. She did something. She was drunk. She was all over that person. She did it even though, whatever, and then it's like you're gonna get rid of that person because they don't want the drama. So the victim always loses, and that's why most girls I actually have been doing a lot of research on basically, why girls don't come out and say anything. It's because we're the ones that get blacklisted. We're the ones that won't be able to get a job because we're damaged goods. She's just drama. And it's really sad because there's a lot of, and it goes for men too. Men go through the same thing. It's not just women. It's just, we talk about women primarily. And you're in a man's world. So it becomes really difficult on that. So, and it's sad that I have to train some of these girls to say, "Hey, you gotta deal with some of this stuff." Like, you have to have, like, thicker skin, you know what I'm saying? If they make a joke, let it roll off your back, because if you don't, you're just not gonna make it, you know? And obviously, if
Yeah.
it gets really serious, we really need to come together and start supporting, and that's one thing that I am known for in this, industry is sticking up for crew members. I had another instance that it was on a boat, and the first, mate on board was just completely horrible to the deckhand. I mean, made him upset every single day, and it's like, your deckhand is new. They know nothing about the boat. They know nothing. Like, you have to train these people. They're not just gonna, you know, get these skill sets just all of a sudden on trip because in 6 months. That doesn't work like that. You have to be a mentor. You have to be a leader. You can't just keep putting someone down over and over and over again. And it was just really sad to watch, honestly, because there's nothing I can do about it, being head of interior because it's not my department. I can like mention some things to the captain, but it's more of that, he needs to, get tougher skin too and just deal with it. And he can't quit because he's new to the industry. So it's like
Mm,
he feels like he has to do a year, so he just deals with the mental bullying.
here's God, that's sad. Have
Mhm.
you have a success story where, things were going bad and, you came in and transformed the performance and morale?
I think I can say that I have definitely done that with a lot of my second stews and my third stews. Just being there for them. I mean, supporting them and just sitting there and talking. And it feels good. It's not up yet, but on Google, if you look at my reviews, I have to fix it because I guess I changed the address and it took off. But I had 27 reviews come in within like 48 hours.
Oh,
And I'm trying
wow.
to get it back up there. Yeah, and it was, like, all these crew members that I've worked with and just said, just calling me, and I've even had crew members call me that I worked with, like, 3 or 4 years ago, and they're like, "Lisa, thank you for always being there for me." Like, just having that support, it made me feel good because I took a brunt of a lot of stuff because I always put my unders, you know I will always shield them, and if I have to get fired for it, then whatever, you know what I'm saying? I'm the leader, so we have to take accountability for something. Um so yeah, we're just trying to build a community with that. And so now I'm kind of working with some other chief stews and just building that because there's so many great chief stews out there, but unfortunately there's a lot of bad ones. It's the same thing. And so we're gonna try to build a community. It's like, when we have these like chats that are coming, we're gonna try to build one where it's like you have to have like qualifications to become part of this chat. You can't just hand out a number and then all these random people get in. And then, because it boggles my mind that some of these chats you get into and I'm watching some of these people that just start the industry that have these big opinions and for, a full year. And it's like
Yeah.
to really like work in the industry to understand it instead of, kind of being a know-it-all.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that looks like, you guys are heading in a positive direction. So do you think that that's the overall trend that we'll see next year is, everything that you're doing, we'll see some improvements there?
Yeah, it's definitely I'm definitely seeing changes actually. I'm really excited. I'm talking to a few people right now and I've been doing research on them and they have been, actually bringing up statistics in yachting and that's what we really need is the statistics. Like what is it showing us, What is the crew turnover? What are crew members actually getting paid, Because we're having issues with like the younger ones that are coming in that just wants to be paid top dollar and you have no experience behind you and then yachting's difficult. You have to work 17 hours a day. And then if you're on trip, like I just got done doing ones 5 months straight, full boat, zero turnaround, you have to keep up. And it's difficult. It's long hours. And that's one of the things that, below deck doesn't really show you. Uh,
Yeah.
that you're constantly working and you have to be strong in that. And a lot of these young people think that it's just partying. And so they're like, they come in and like, I just want to eat. I need to take a break. I need 20 billion breaks. You know, these owners are on trip. Like you have to be in motion. So sometimes, and it all depends on what size vessels. If you're on the 150s or above, yeah, insurances, it changes. So there's more accountability on the bigger boats because you have to follow guidelines. On the ones underneath that, no, there is none. Like there'll be sometimes you can get it, and that's because we don't have enough crew. So it's like if you want your 2 hour breaks, hopefully you're, experienced enough and organized enough to be able to get those breaks it's perfect, and you have to, like, put them in there too as well, obviously, for your
Oh.
mental.
I think last time we talked, we sort of brushed on tech and what you're using in your business. Like you said, we need the data. Do you see yourself implementing it more in your business moving forward to get all this information?
Yeah, I actually have been seeing a lot of stuff, and AI has definitely been helping out a lot with that, which, obviously you have your pros and cons with AI, and this is one of the pros on it. I think having technology and being able to get statistics correct and, really treating yachting as a business instead of just a free for all. I'm really excited about that. And I've been watching some of these, yacht seminars that's been happening overseas and what they're talking about and a lot of them and now these new captains too that are becoming Instagram famous, they're coming on and actually talking about mental health and being there for the crew and it's amazing to see that because I've waited, over 2 decades to see this and it's finally like coming out and it feels good to watch captains come out and say, "Hey, we, respect and we value our crew members. We care about your mental health." So yeah, I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
So that's amazing work, Lisa. So, and I'm excited to see what you have in store.
Like, I wanna make sure I'm on boats that are under 150 feet.
Hmm.
So, it's very important because the size does matter based on protocols and everything that, logistics that go into it.
Gotcha.
So yeah, just for the listeners to know, because obviously if you're on the 200 footers, you're not having as many issues or problems. Are you having some problems? Yeah, but it's more structured like a business. And the management teams are like, there. So
Oh, okay. I was about to ask what is the difference? And that's it. They just have another hierarchy of a management team on the larger
there's more
vessel?
eyes on them. It's the bigger boat, more eyes. Insurance want all this stuff. You have to be able to like, um, submit a lot of stuff. Like, one of the things that you have to have on board is you have to have surveillance on the boat, meaning watch. Someone has to stay on watch 24/7. So like someone's on deck at all times. And, on the smaller boats, you'll see some captains implement it, but there's other boats that don't implement any of that. And you'll see people kind of leaving their boat, a few days or a weekend or, whatnot. So like those are just some minor differences. And then when it also comes into a bigger boat and vessel, captains have more, compliance to work with the, the managers or whatnot. They actually have someone they have to go and get approval for. They can't just be free for all, say, hey, this is my decision and that's it. They actually have to go through something to make sure that those decisions go through.
Okay.
Versus on the small boats, no.
All
Captain
right.
wants it, they get it.
Gotcha. So the size of the boats that you work on specifically, are they more common than the larger ones or they're a mix?
It's definitely more common, I would have to say. Yeah, because I
Okay,
was actually looking up, how many yachts there are in the world, and it's a really small number, and it's crazy because majority of them are, tenders, which is crazy because I thought it would be like the yachts, especially my
yeah,
size, because they're more affordable for people. But
sure.
yeah, I would have to say we definitely in the range between 100 feet and 140, 150. There's a lot more than there are the 200 footers for sure.
All right. Well, very cool. And you have tons to be excited for, obviously. What's something that you're looking forward to the most next year?
Looking forward to next year and just looking forward to like really getting my business out there and um yeah, and just really getting the support from the crew, from owners, from brokers and from captains because really, On Deck really supports everybody. It supports the brokers in the sense of we make sure that your clients stay your clients. So, if you want to go based on how this works, the brokers are the one that get the clients. They purchase the boat, but they just purchase the boat and then hand it over to the captain, and then that's it. So basically, I've heard a lot of brokers say, like, a lot of people say that owners sell their boats between 3 to 5 years, and it's majority because of crew turnover, overspending, all of
Wow.
those. And so, and to prevent that, On Deck comes in and does the handover. Once you purchase the boat from the broker, I make sure that we work hand in hand together so that I keep your clients completely happy of, how things are running on the interior. And making sure that your clients stay with your clients. And then I go and help with, obviously the HR part of, the interior management thing for captains so that they don't have to deal with all the like the things that they don't want to deal with. A lot of captains are like, oh my God, are they fighting about this again? You know what I'm saying? And to,
Yes.
the crew, that's a big deal. To them, they're like, I have better things to do. And so it kind of gives them more hours by themselves because, captains they don't know if we're doing turn downs or turn ups correctly. They don't know if we're provisioning our wines correctly. They're not really into that. Like it's not that they don't want to know. It's just they have a lot of things manning the boat. They don't know much about the interior. So, On Deck makes sure that the interior team is on point. And then, with heads of department, with chief stews, they have someone to call, vent and say, hey, I'm having this issue. My second, third, or fourth stew's not paying attention. I don't know how. And then we work together and basically squash that and to make them a better leader. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
learn together so that they feel comfortable and supported. And then if you happen to get a psycho chief stew, because they're out there too, the lowers can come up and say, hey, like, can we do this? And then basically not do what that one, management company did to me. I wouldn't be naming names. I would go say, "Hey, how's everything going?" Have like a meeting and make it very discreet. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't like bring up specific situations, but like get into it a little bit and, help everyone grow and like each other because we're on a small vessel. We are in very close quarters and it doesn't matter if you're on the big boats too. Like there's no privacy whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, we know everything about each other.
Yeah.
So,
So you might as well like each other while you're
yeah,
at it.
so yeah, I just, I'm hoping that, On Deck does that for the crew and gets them to bond and really supports the people within their roles. And so that we can actually have a good industry.
Absolutely. Everything I'm hearing, you were like a godsend to a lot of these crews, the captains, and even you said brokers. It's like, this is what, you guys need. And yeah, I'm
Oh,
super
and then I
excited
forgot
for you.
for management companies.
Yeah.
Management companies, they deal with compliance, payroll, all of that stuff. Like, we're the arm. We're like the the company that comes in and deals with like pretty much all the BS they don't want to, the crew drama, the
Yeah.
interior stuff, and actually coming on board and making sure everything is going, the interior team's doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So it's really a branch off. So there is no competition. I'm not just a
Mhm.
management company that just is coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to take over everything and everything." No, not at all. I want the captain to be able to be a captain, because captains sometimes deal with, owners that want to bring in a trusted friend or their personal assistant or someone like
Mm,
that, and then the captain's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like it kind of stops all that so the captain can actually be a captain and not overstepping boundaries. So even though I'm going to be the buffer in between the captain and with basically owners, the captain has full say. Whatever the captain wants, is what they're going to get no matter what. And the same thing, with the brokers. I make sure that your clients don't go anywhere, because there are some captains out there that will steal your client and open up a brokerage company and want to sell the boat underneath you, and On Deck would prevent that and protect brokers, and then, vice versa. And then big management companies that actually need someone that goes in and does the little nitty gritty stuff that's in between. And that's where the gap is. And that's where it's needed. And we help support that because I don't want to do payroll. I don't want to do compliance. I don't want to do
Mhm.
any of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really team oriented, and it's about unity and bringing this industry together, not segregating everyone.
And I think I told you before, but I can't wait for the Netflix documentary to come out, perhaps,
Yeah.
because this is a lot. Wow. And yeah, it only goes up from here. So thank you so much again for joining and sharing all of that. It's
Yeah.
been totally enlightening to me specifically, the nitty gritty of the crews, the interiors, the exteriors, and the captains and the positions. Wow, there's just so much to it. So it's very, very intriguing.
I know. Well, thank you so much for being interested in it. Honestly, this industry needs a little light and some shining into it. And I definitely appreciate the support and just being interested in all of this stuff.
My pleasure. Well, thank you again. I know you have some weekend fun to catch up on, and happy holidays.
Yeah. Happy holidays. And thank you, Megan.
Bye.